Okay, for our next project, we're going to be working with colored pencils. So we need to practice proper colored pencil technique. So here are a couple of different techniques for how to use your colored pencils. And then you'll be utilizing all of these in your next piece. Okay, so making sure that you have colors that are next to each other in the color wheel, because then they'll blend into one another, and it'll give you a nice value, light to dark. So I have a red, I have an orange, and I have a yellow. Okay, one of the first technique we're going to work from here is going to be hatching. What I like to do is I like to have a couple of papers underneath the paper I'm working on, especially if it's thin, just so that I don't get the texture of the table or wherever I'm working. So hatching lines are lines that go in one direction. So you see here, the closer the lines, the denser and darker the color. So I'm going to have lines, and the lines that are closer together are going to look darker. And then as I start to get them further away from each other, it's going to start looking lighter and lighter. And I can go back over that with another layer. But you can see that I have a nice value going dark to light. So the closer the lines are to each other, the darker it looks, and then the further away they are, then the fewer there are, it starts to get lighter. Okay, cross hatching is similar in that these lines overlap. So you have you have lines that are overlapping in different directions. So I'm going to kind of start it out the same way as my hatching lines, and I'm going to go in one direction, have my lines closer together, and then as I start to get to that other corner, I'm going to start to get my piece a little further away from each other. But now I'm going to go back over, and I'm going to put lines going in the opposite direction. And again, as these lines get further away from each other, it still looks lighter in this corner here. For stippling is dots. And again, same idea. If you have a lot of marks close together, it's going to look darker. So this is a really good technique to use with pen and ink. Colored pencil, I think that this would be a good technique to use to show a texture. But as you can see, my dots are very close together in this corner. And then as I start to go out, I'm going to have fewer dots and have them spread out. So you can see, so my corner is nice and dark, and then as it spreads out, my marks are getting lighter and lighter. I'm sorry, I'm getting fewer dots going out, and so it looks lighter. Okay, so far all I've really been doing is using the same color, but just by changing the amount of marks, it's making it look lighter or darker. Okay, so pressure, the more pressure that you put on your pencil is going to give darker shades, and lighter pressure is lighter shades. So you don't want to like really dig into the paper, but you can press a little bit harder. So if I'm going to work in this corner, I'm going to press a little bit harder, and then as I come out, I'm going to start to lighten my pressure of my pencil, and I'm going to fade it out. And I'm using very, very light pressure, almost just like the pressure of the pencil to this corner. And then I can go back and overlap and add a little bit more pressure, lighten it out. So I'm going from dark to light there. Okay, now layering. This is a technique that you're probably going to use more, is where you're going to be overlapping your colors. So the colors that I have here, I have my red, I have my orange, and my yellow. You're going to be overlapping them so you can get all those intermediate colors. So by overlapping my red and my orange, I'm going to get a red orange. By overlapping my orange and my yellow, I'll get a yellow orange. So then I'll be able to get 5 colors out of here rather than just using 3 by overlapping them. So you're going to start with your darkest color, which is going to be my red, and I'm going to put kind of a heavy pressure in the corner. So that's going to be my red. And now as I kind of pull it out, I'm going to start to lighten my pressure a little bit. So as I lighten my pressure, what I'm doing is I'm going to give a spot for my orange to now overlap my red. So right where this lighter value is, I'm going to overlap with my orange. So since I'm overlapping that red with my orange, these two colors are visually blending together to make like a red-orange. And now I'm going to fade out with my orange. And then again, just like I did with my red, I'm going to fade out a little bit. So now I'm going to go in with my yellow. I'm going to overlap on my orange a little bit. And then I'm going to fade that out to yellow. Now, the trick here is you want to make sure that you're not going to have stripes of color. So right now it looks a little stripy. So I'm going to go back in. I'm going to go back in with my red. And you don't want to have stripes of color. You really want them to fade evenly into one another. So I'm going to go back in. I redid my my red. And now I'm going to go back in, redo my orange. I really want this blend, like where the orange and the red to meet, to be kind of seamless. And same thing where my orange and my yellow meet. I want it to really fade nicely into each other. You can see that I'm going back and forth with my colors till I have a nice blend. So it's not going to be just a once and done kind of a thing. You have to really be patient and really build these colors up so you have a nice even blend of color. So you can see I have a nice even blend from red to yellow. Okay, and the last technique here is called burnishing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do another fade like this. And I'm going to lay out some red. I'm going to overlap with my orange. Overlap with my yellow. And again, I'm going to go back in so it doesn't look like stripes of color. I'm going to go back in. Overlap these, make them a little bit more seamless. Okay, and now what burnishing is you can use a light color and go over your pencil, and it kind of blends everything together. There's a type of color pencil called a blending tool, a colorless blender. I don't think that you guys have those in your kits, but another way to do it is by using a white colored pencil. And so what that does is you go over it and just kind of helps to blend everything together. Really helps to get rid of the texture of the paper. And I like using my white color pencil a little better than using a colorless blender, because the colorless blender is a little waxy. And then if I do it too much, then what will happen is I won't be able to add color on top of this. So since I'm just working with like another colored pencil, this white, then what I can do is I could, if I needed to, go back in and like lay in more red to maybe darken this up a little bit. But with the colorless, with burnishing, just kind of helps to smooth out the color. You can do it with a lighter colored pencil, so I could go over like with just my yellow if I wanted to and burnish. But like I said, I like to use my white colored pencil too to do that. So you can kind of see the difference between this burnished one and this one here. You kind of have a little bit of texture still from the paper, and then this looks a little bit more rich. Okay, so that is different techniques for colored pencil.